Okay, let's start with something that a lot of people have asked me to talk about on the show. This is really interesting. The latest right-wing buzzword that's getting people fired up and angry is critical race theory. Republicans are absolutely and completely against the teaching of critical race theory in schools. They want to ban it. They believe it's terrible. It might even be communist or socialist. It's really, really bad. But they don't actually know what it is. Check out this interview that Mark Lamont Hill did with former Georgia Congressman Vernon Jones, a Trumpian favorite, who is really against critical race theory, but he has no idea what it is. Check this out.
What is critical race theory?
Well, actually, I think it's different depending on who's teaching it and how they're teaching it. I think you can agree with that. We were taught that Christopher Columbus discovered America. Well, you and I both know that Christopher Columbus got lost. People are already living here. But there are those who are using their own ideology and their own party affiliation to go to the extreme. And that's all I'm trying to address here.
But what does that have to do with critical race theory? Let me pause for 1 second. I'm trying to understand though. You oppose critical race theory, which I understand. I'm just asking, what is it? What is the thing you define it? Like, for example, if I said I'm against creationism, I would say creationism is X, Y, and Z, right? If I said I was against the teaching of sex education, I say, well, sex education is X, Y, and Z, and I'd have a basis for it. What is critical race theory?
Well, first of all, again, I can tell you, but it's left up to you to understand. I can't make you understand. The fact of it is, the critical race theory, even on its basis, should not be taught in our schools, period. Now, if you can't understand
But what is it?
And if you want to debate, well, to me, what it does, to me, my interpretation, as well as many others.
No, not what it does. What is it? How do you define it? I mean, that's asking you to define critical race theory because my audience may not know.
Well,
Say it
obviously
again?
you don't know. And you haven't, I said, obviously you don't know and you haven't told your audience. But again, how I see it and how
I
it's
don't
been
know.
received. Well, then what is it then? No, what is it then? Okay,
Well,
what
I'm
is it?
happy
You
to
tell
answer
me.
that for you, but you're
Well, answer it for me.
saying
And just answer it.
you-
I'll tell you what,
I-
just
I
answer
will.
it for me.
I
Let's not
absolutely-
get into debate. Okay, I'm waiting for you to answer. Go ahead and answer it.
I will. But just
No,
hold on
just
one
answer it.
second.
Just answer it.
You're saying that on day one,
Answer the question
on day
first.
one.
No, answer
you're-
the question first.
or-
You answer the first question. We'll go to
I
your
promise
next
I'll
question.
answer your
I'll
question.
wait till you answer.
So you get the picture. Vernon Jones just doesn't know what it is. That's just one example, but this is the bottom line. They continue to attack critical race theory without actually indicating that they know what it is. When they're asked what it is, they seem to have no idea, or they say critical race theory is the idea that every white person is a white supremacist oppressor. Now, we should understand what critical race theory is, and I want to be really clear that critical race theory is not my primary lens through which I view the world. I find it reductionist, but I'm going to tell you what critical race theory is, and then you can research more. You can decide whether you think it's an accurate lens or whether it should be part of your worldview, okay? The way I see critical race theory is a sort of race reductionism. Now, if you've heard the term class reductionism, there's a very simple analogy to at least give us an initial basic understanding of critical race theory, although it's not nuanced enough, and I admit that. Class reductionists believe that at some fundamental level, any division, any problem, any conflict, any inequality in society, in politics, in an economy, even if it seems it might be caused by many things, is actually about class. Something that, to a class reductionist, something that looks like a racial issue, to a class reductionist, it's really a problem caused by class differences. And the racial factors may just be confounding, or they may be coincidental, or they may not even be relevant. So to make a very rough analogy to give us a start in understanding critical race theory would analogously argue that what might seem like a class problem or an economic problem or a political problem, that it is actually fundamentally a problem of race and racism. In the US specifically, it would be racism generally by white people against non-white people, in particular against Black Americans. Now, that's the most basic explanation. It's far more detailed. It's an area of academic research now for 30 years and really even more than that. The roots of critical race theory are in the 60s and 70s. But without getting into, a more nuanced definition would include the idea of creating subgroups of humans, developing law and systems that are inherently racist and designed to maintain these inequalities between whites and non-whites. And you can use that analysis when you look at any system. You can look at the education system through the lens of critical race theory, or the election system, and on and on. Now, there are undoubtedly many ways in which aspects of critical race theory are completely accurate. Where I disagree with critical race theory, much the same way I disagree with class reductionism, is that I don't think anything is quite so simple. On a planet of 7 billion people, in a country of 331 million like the US, we can never really say this issue is solely informed by one thing, whether it's race, I've never found an issue where race is the one lens through which we understand it, or class is the one lens, or geography is the one lens. It's just never been that way on any issue I've studied. But this is not about my view. This is about the reality that the very people angrily denouncing critical race theory have no idea what it even is. Now, I want to say one other thing about that. This is not uncommon. Think about the usage of the term socialist during the last presidential election. I've asked lots of these people when I interview them, or when they call in, or when, whatever, what do you mean socialist? And they have no idea what it means, but they use it and they believe Joe Biden is one. Now, cartoonishly, as one example, here's what happened when conservative Jesse Lee Peterson brought it up when I visited his studio in Los Angeles. And the topic of socialism came up during the Trump administration. Take a look.
Because it's the straight, white, conservative Christian man who's holding the country together.
Oh.
If it wasn't for them, America would be a socialist society already.
It would be what?
A socialist society.
How would it become
because
socialist?
if you notice, the average black man has no authority, no power. The Mexican doesn't have any. It's that white, straight, conservative Christian man that is preventing them from turning this country into a socialist society.
But so here, let me ask you about this. I'm not a socialist myself. I'm a just to be clear, I'm not advocating for socialism.
Okay.
I don't know that many actual socialists. Like where's the big desire for the U.S. to become socialist?
If you look at the Democratic Party,
there's almost no socialists in the Democratic Party.
It's a socialist communist party now. It's
what's one socialist idea from the Democratic Party?
Socialized healthcare.
No, that's a social democracy program.
No.
Yeah. Is Denmark socialist?
And if you notice that Barack Obama, the fallen messiah, he's the fallen messiah, right?
I don't know anything about that.
And Big Mama Michelle, he tried to turn America into a socialist society.
What's one example of a socialist policy that he had?
Socialized healthcare.
He didn't do that. He did for-profit Obamacare.
Taking care of everybody.
How so?
By getting rid of jobs. Most people
He took care of people by getting rid of jobs.
Full-time jobs, and they had to work 2 part-time jobs in order to survive.
Jesse, you don't even understand the talking points you're using.
The rest stopped working and just went and depended on and relied on the government. Free Obama phones.
That's socialism?
Is that socialism?
So how can you...
Is free Obama phones socialism?
I want to ask a real question.
I'm asking you a real question.
Obama phones are not socialism. No,
really?
I'll answer your question. Let me ask you I really want to know this. The arguments against places like Venezuela and Cuba and other so-called socialist countries are that no one has anything, no one can afford anything, there's no technology, there's no food. But you're saying that cell phones for people are socialism?
Yes.
That's your argument?
Yes.
All right.
That's an example of it.
Yeah. So the point is, there's no difference here. They don't know what socialism is. They don't know what critical race theory is. The first step in every single one of these conversations should be ask them to define the terms, and you will very quickly see that they have no idea what they are talking about. One of our sponsors is Curiosity Stream, letting my audience try it free for an entire month. I love Curiosity Stream, perfect for people like me or anybody who watches the David Pakman Show. Curiosity Stream is kind of like Netflix for documentaries. It's a streaming service with thousands of documentaries from some of the best filmmakers. Many are exclusive to Curiosity Stream, including documentaries on politics, science, history, everything. The Curiosity Stream app is great. I use it on my TV, phone, and iPad. I just watched, as I told you, very recently, Engineering the Future. Very, very interesting about potential future technologies. And they always have the newest and most popular documentaries. They have amazing ones that I can't find on other platforms. And Curiosity Stream is just $2.99 a month or $19.99 for a whole year. But you can try it totally free for 1 month when you go to curiositystream.com/Pakman and use the promo code Pakman.